Headshot by Rita Bullwinkel is about women in boxing. So is this book a knockout, or should you dodge this one? Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop, spoiler-free shop for all things audiobook. A friend of mine was reading Headshot and told me about the premise, and I thought it sounded really interesting. So I went onto my Libby app and I downloaded a copy that I could borrow and started to listen. Now, this book has won a ton of awards, so many in fact that there's no way I could possibly memorize them to tell you, so I'm just going to read them out. It was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, it was longlisted for the Booker Prize, it was a Center for Fiction first novel finalist, Barack Obama had it on his 2024 reading list, and it was named one of the best books of 2024 by the New York Times Book Review, NPR, Time, Elle, Vulture, LitHub, and The Guardian. So yeah, people are talking about this book. I'm going to tell you what I liked about it, but I'm also going to tell you why I am baffled by all of these accolades. First off, let me tell you that there are probably plenty of people out there who think this book is rock solid. It follows a bunch of young women in a boxing tournament, and it talks through their aspirations, their hopes and dreams, their goals, and also what's going on in the tournament. The book takes you through each fight and each pair of fighters in that fight. So you learn about how they got there, why they're there, and what they hope to accomplish by being there. In some cases, you even learn what happens to them way in the future as they're fighting. I found the narrative structure of past, present, and simultaneous future to be really unusual and really interesting. I've never read anything like that where you're really hearing about the backstory and the future story in the middle of the present, and I thought that was a very different way of writing a narrative. The idea that I could have insight into what the girls were thinking, I could hear the details of the physicality of the fight, and I knew their backstory and also how they end up all at one time, in my opinion, is probably why this book was up for just so many awards. There's also a subplot of how a lot of these women are stuck in their situation and don't really have a way out, and boxing might be that way. Now, I found that part of the book disjointed. Because I was going through so many different fighters in the story and I was hearing about each one of them, there wasn't enough of a thread about the sort of rising beyond your situation story that I felt like that was connected at all. I mean, each of the boxers had a little bit of that to their story, but it didn't read to me as a large theme in the book. I found each girl's story to be really unique, but I didn't think there was enough commonality to them to feel like the author was making a point about their backgrounds and their economic situations, for example. This is called the Daughters of America Cup, and it's supposed to be set in as middle America as it can possibly be. Now, there was one boxing match in particular that I think most effectively told this idea of rising out of your situation, and it was a story about two cousins who have to fight each other. You hear about them traveling to the match together, you hear about them fighting each other, you hear about why each one of them gets into boxing, and then you hear how it impacts each of them. Now, that chapter to me was the most effective in communicating the overall themes of the book, but it's really the only one of the chapters where I felt like those themes were crystal clear, and there were a lot more chapters in this book. The beginning fights caught my attention and felt really distinct and unique, but as the book went on, I started to lose the broader societal and psychological themes that were going on, and I just sort of got wrapped up in the action of the actual fight. I wasn't really as into the backstory or who these girls were as a person. I just felt like I was hearing about fights. I do think Bullwinkel explained boxing really well for someone who's not familiar with it, like me. Her language was technical but straightforward, and I felt like as an outsider to boxing, I did understand a little bit more, and I kind of got the significance of a lot of the moves that the girls were making. So that part of the book was a win for me, and I really enjoyed learning a little bit about it. I know boxing is a very physically tough sport, but seeing as I've never really watched it, it was interesting to get some of the strategy, or at least think I did. The book was narrated by Cassandra Campbell, who provided an unobtrusive narration. It wasn't very remarkable to me, but then again, the book wasn't very remarkable to me, so I'll withhold judgment on Cassandra Campbell because maybe she's a great narrator and she was just handed some dull material, because in my opinion, this book was kind of flat. Even though this is a short book, I think the density might slow down some readers and listeners. I really felt like it was hard to get into, or rather I started out really strongly and then just kind of faded. Initially, I was really interested in the characters' backstories, but as the book went on, that just sort of faded for me, and it started to go more into the girls' futures, and I didn't go with it. I do think the best thing this book had going for it was its unusual narrative structure. The sort of non-linear future cast in present with backstory all at the same time was really amusing and intriguing, and I would want to read more of that idea, maybe just not about boxing? It blended moment-to-moment descriptions with sort of sweeping storytelling, and I think that premise or that style could be really effective with maybe some slightly different content. It definitely challenges your expectations, and I suppose that's probably why it was up for so many awards. In spite of a really strong start, something about this book dragged for me. I typically read a 400-page book in about 5 days, and in this case, the book was about half that length and it took me 8 days. When I find myself really hesitating to go towards something, it's not a good sign. Now, I will say I did find it interesting enough that I stuck with it to the end, but for me this landed at just 3.5 stars. I'd be curious to hear what others who have read it think, but from what I can tell from all the ratings on the internet, it seems like most of the internet is on the same page as me. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion, but thanks for listening to mine. I hope you're enjoying your holidays, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.